Mark Perlman, you're just a quick reaction to that. Could the incumbents have run a different campaign? When you look at the long arc of French history, it's a re-elected president. That doesn't always happen. On the other hand, losing a majority.
Yes, clearly.
Incumbent fatigue?
Incumbent fatigue. And clearly, as we discussed earlier, Macron is himself, but there's no real party behind him. Yes, there was a Macron wave at the National Assembly last time because it was new, he was fresh, he had this new movement with new faces, over 300 MPs. He's getting half of that, so clearly this is not enough. And the French decided not to sign him a blank check, and they don't want Jupiter to govern. They want more coalition politics, German style, and this is new, and this is going to be difficult for Emmanuel Macron because this is he's not a seasoned politician. He was someone who was elected, who is able to govern with a free hand. He's going to have to learn to sit down and negotiate not only with Vladimir Putin, but maybe with the conservative parties or maybe on some texts with the left.
Do you want coalition politics, Sophie Rauser? Because we heard a speech by Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He talked about the march of history. He talked about revolutionary change, was I believe his exact words. Does that mean he's against reform, left-wing reform even?
No, we're in favor of left-wing
So does that mean you're in favor of coalition?
Well, if Macron agrees with us to raise the minimum wage, for example, I mean, there's no problem. If he offers to the House, to the National Assembly, a law that is truly against social inequity, we would definitely vote in favor. But I doubt that this is what he will do. And don't forget that as in other parliaments, you were talking about the German example, we could also bring the Spanish example. You can also, from within the House, you know, when you're a member, propose legislation. And I think this is the major new thing here, is that for once with 17 MEPs, France Insoumise was able to make multiple proposals of the legislations. And now that we have, the latest figure was almost 150.
So you're glad that the legislature is back, if you will?
Yes, I'm very glad that finally in Europe we will also have a parliament that does have a power.
But aren't you afraid that Emmanuel Macron will try to pick some members of your coalition, maybe the Greens, and essentially make sure your coalition explodes after tonight?
Of course, I'm sure he will try. I'm sure he will try first to reach out to the Republican, because most of the reforms that he said, for example, the pension reform, this is something the Republican can agree with. And if he doesn't get that, you might remember that Bruno Le Maire was also saying that the pension reform could be also done by the Article, 49, which is, go for the reform without
a parliamentary vote.
Yeah, without having a parliamentary vote. That's my major concern tonight, is this one, is that he will govern without the approval of the National Assembly, and if not with the Republican, but I'm not, convinced that he will reach out to us anyway.
That empty podium you see behind us here, that is where the Prime Minister will speak from the Prime Minister's offices at the Matignon Hall in the left bank of Paris. Are you expecting her to... What are you expecting from her?
Well,
what should she say at this point, in view of this result?
I think they should be a bit more humble than what they have shown so far. On the way to here, I was listening to Dupond-Moretti, who was still being very arrogant, against the result of the left, very arrogant against in the face of the Front National, the extreme right wing being so high. He had nothing to blame himself and his government for. I think this attitude, to start with, has to change.
Mathieu Douai?
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit more complex than this. The situation is the continuation of what happened 5 years ago. It's the next stage in a transformation of the Fifth Republic. First, we had the collapse of the traditional left-wing alternance in power and of this very rigid divide that produced actually overall majorities in parliament. So it was almost by accident that actually Emmanuel Macron had a majority in the previous parliament, because actually at first we thought he would not have. And then the other parties were so, I would say, disoriented that they didn't know how to campaign against Macron at that time. And so he kind of a majority by default, which is not unusual in a presidential regime. But the
he
regime
promised something new 5 years ago. He promised he'd take the best of the left
I think
and the
he
best of the
promised
right.
nothing at all. I think people could just project anything they were fed up with on the past on his opponents and project anything new and potentially better on him because he was a blank sheet. But for the moment, the question is, do they want to return to the past? The answer has clearly been a complete no. No to the return of the former Socialist Party.
The return
and
of
former
politics,
Republican
Mark
power.
Perlman.
The return of politics